Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sip and Talk. We're doing another deep dive today.
That's right.
And we've pulled together some really fascinating insights looking at this idea of true power.
Yeah.
We've got perspectives from history, philosophy, psychology, and also how it all plays out or maybe gets kind of messed up in the world right now.
It's a big one. We're going to try and really unpack what power actually means. Look at some of the historical wisdom and contrast that with, well, how we often think about it or maybe chase after it today. And we'll ground it with some real world examples too.
Absolutely. It feels like a word everyone uses, power.
Right.
Everyone seems to want it, but maybe we're not all on the same page about what it is.
Exactly. It gets misunderstood, I think, a lot.
So the mission for you listening in is hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a clearer sense of what genuine power looks like. Not just, out there on the big stage, but maybe within yourself too.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay, let's dive in. Let's start with the foundations. When we talk about power traditionally, historically, what did that look like? What were the thinkers emphasizing?
Well, historically, the idea of true power was surprisingly consistent, actually, across different times and places. And it wasn't really about just having control over other people.
Not about dominance.
Not primarily, no. It was much more rooted in the ability to endure, to act with integrity, real integrity under pressure.
Okay.
And crucially, to choose the right thing, the principled path, even when that was really costly, like personally costly.
Yeah.
Sacrifice, hardship, that kind of thing.
So it's an internal resilience then.
Yeah.
A moral strength.
Precisely. It's possessing this deep kind of moral and emotional resilience that lets you stand firm. It's not about avoiding the tough stuff. It's about having the inner strength to face it and, move through it properly.
So it's like a quiet strength, not brute force.
Exactly. Quiet, controlled strength. Inner authority, not just like external muscle. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, put it brilliantly.
He wrote something like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength."
Wow. Okay, that one line just it shifts everything, doesn't it?
It really does.
It pulls power away from manipulating the world out there and plants it firmly inside yourself. It becomes about mastering you.
Absolutely. Self-mastery isn't just part of it. It's like the foundation of true power in this view.
Right.
It's that ability to stay stable, centered, calm, even when everything outside is just chaos.
Yeah.
It means you're not just being blown around by circumstances or what other people do. You're actively choosing how you respond. You're guiding your own internal state.
That really lands. It's that feeling, when your first impulse, maybe your pride or anger speaking, is just to lash out or escalate things. Holding back, then staying calm, that takes a totally different kind of strength than just, shouting the loudest or being imposing.
It really does. And it's interesting. The people who genuinely have this kind of power, they often don't talk about it much. They don't broadcast it.
No, they don't need to. Because usually this isn't power you inherit or just claim. It's forged over time.
Right.
Built by navigating real struggles, making tough sacrifices, choosing that harder, principled path again and again. It grows in those quiet moments, Choosing silence when provoked, choosing restraint when you could force the issue, enduring hardship with dignity. It's learned resilience.
That paints a really clear picture. But I gotta say, that feels worlds away from what our society often seems to celebrate as power now.
Oh, completely. It couldn't be more different, honestly. A lot of what gets called power today, frankly, it's just narcissism in disguise.
Oof. Okay, that's a bold claim. Tell us more.
Well, this fake power, it's rooted in ego.
Right.
A deep need for constant attention, for validation from the outside. It's wanting to be admired, praised, listened to, but without ever really being challenged. It's about demanding respect because of your title or your perceived status, or just because you say so, instead of actually quietly earning it through your actions, your integrity, your character.
Yeah, I can totally see that. You look at some public figures or even characters in movies or TV shows.
Right.
They're shown as powerful just because the script says so, or because they shout it from the rooftops. They're always right, never wrong, never vulnerable.
Exactly. It's not earned respect. It's just asserting a manufactured image. It often becomes a kind of performance, or worse, self-worship.
Self-worship.
Yeah, think about people, real or fictional, who are presented as strong just because they emotionally steamroll everyone else, or they refuse to listen to anyone else's point of view, won't compromise on anything, being difficult, being stubborn, overwhelming people.
Yeah.
That's not strength. That's often just deep insecurity.
Right. And it just makes you impossible to work with in the end, and probably pretty ineffective.
Totally ineffective. That's what we could call wrong power. It comes from believing the world revolves around you.
So where does that come from? Do people learn that?
Often, yeah. Or maybe it's what they don't learn. Like, if you grow up without seeing a strong, positive role model who actually embodies that quiet, enduring strength, it leaves a gap. Or, sadly, if you experience abuse or manipulation from someone who should have been a positive authority figure, that can expose you to this really distorted, fake kind of power. And in those situations, it's easy to start mixing things up. Mistaking loudness for confidence, confusing control with leadership, seeing arrogance and thinking it's self-assurance. If you haven't seen the real thing, the quiet strength, you can easily fall for the noisy imitation.
And that confusion feels pretty widespread, doesn't it? Not just in the media. It affects our everyday lives, our expectations.
Absolutely. It's everywhere. And this mix-up, mistaking narcissism for real strength, it has big consequences. It warps what we expect from leaders, from friends, even from ourselves. It changes the stories we tell, the behavior we reward without even realizing it. People start focusing on performing strength instead of actually growing strong.
Right, protecting the image instead of building the substance.
Exactly. Obsessing over the facade instead of building that solid inner core. Fixating on being right all the time instead of actually seeking wisdom or understanding. True power doesn't need the spotlight. It doesn't need applause. It grows quietly through challenges, through conscious choices. It's something you become, not something you just declare you are.
That's a really key distinction. So it boils down to maybe choosing restraint sometimes, instead of always needing to dominate or control.
That's a huge part of it, a fundamental difference. True power gives you the option of restraint. Fake power feels compelled to subjugate, to control others.
Okay, let's make this even more concrete. Can you give us some real-world examples that really highlight this difference?
Absolutely. Examples really help lock this in.
Right.
Let's start with, say, Gandhi versus the British colonial government in India.
Okay, classic example.
The British Empire had all the conventional power, right? Armies, laws, prisons, economic control. Huge external force. And they used it through oppression. That's that external kind of fake power display.
Right, imposing their will.
Definitely. But Gandhi, he operated with a completely different kind of force, moral force. He used nonviolent resistance, organized millions, endured beatings, jail time, incredible hardship. But he consistently chose principle, patience, endurance over hitting back with violence.
And that wasn't weakness.
Not at all. It was unbelievably potent, true power, rooted in that deep inner conviction and persistence. He didn't meet force with force. He undermined the moral legitimacy of their power.
And changed history doing it. Okay, who else?
Nelson Mandela, think about him. 27 years in prison under an oppressive regime.
Yeah.
I mean, if anyone had a right to hate, to seek revenge when he got out.
You think so?
But he didn't. He chose forgiveness, reconciliation. He pushed for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
That takes almost unimaginable inner strength.
It's an incredible example of true power. He said something profound, like, if I leave the cell, still hating, I am still a prisoner.
Wow.
That just nails it, doesn't it? The power to free himself from bitterness, and by doing that, helping free a whole nation through tolerance, understanding, not dominating his former captors, but healing the wounds.
That quote really captures that internal victory. Got another one?
How about the Japanese people after the 3/11 earthquake and tsunami in 2011?
Oh, right. I remember the coverage.
Unimaginable devastation, chaos, loss, scarcity, but the societal response. Overwhelmingly, it was incredible self-discipline, orderliness, mutual aid.
Very little looting or violence, which often happens elsewhere in disasters.
Exactly. And some people might look at that orderliness and mistakenly think it's, I don't know, a lack of individual power or assertiveness.
But you're saying it's the opposite.
Precisely. It was a massive demonstration of collective and individual inner strength, the power to control yourself under extreme stress, to suppress panic, self-interest, to help others maintain order even when everything's collapsing.
True power isn't about shoving others aside to get ahead. It's about standing firm yourself, keeping your integrity, and maybe helping lift others up, too.
Yeah.
Without needing to push anyone down.
These examples draw such a clear line. Okay, now you mentioned this narcissistic blind spot earlier, especially in our sort of performance-driven world. What does that actually look like day to day?
Yes, that blind spot. You see it all the time, especially online. People constantly loudly declaring how right they are, how they knew things first, how anyone who disagrees is just wrong or stupid, malicious.
Right, building an echo chamber.
Exactly. They actively shut down dissent, block critics, delete comments that aren't just pure praise, surround themselves with people who just agree.
It doesn't feel like strength, though, does it? It feels more fragile, defensive.
Totally. It looks strong on the surface, loud, assertive, dominant, but it comes from deep anxiety. Their self-worth is incredibly brittle if they lose that position of being right or superior.
Their whole identity feels threatened, like it could just collapse. And this blind spot shows up in specific ways, like seeing any criticism, even helpful feedback, as a personal attack.
Right, hostility instead of help.
Exactly, or seeing questions as disloyalty, not just someone thinking for themselves. And crucially, they tend to massively overestimate their own impact, their own knowledge, while totally underestimating their biases, their limitations, how likely they are to be wrong.
That sounds a lot like that Dunning-Kruger effect people talk about.
It connects very closely. That's the bias, where people with low competence or low self-awareness in an area overestimate their ability, right?
Yeah, and competent people underestimate theirs.
Right. So combine that lack of self-reflection with narcissism, and you get someone who genuinely believes they're super powerful or insightful, often because they lack the humility to even see their own limitations. They literally can't see their blind spot.
Okay, this gives us a really thorough picture of both sides' true power, fake power. So, the big question then, how can we, just as individuals living our lives, avoid these traps? How do we cultivate that genuine, quiet strength?
That's the key question, isn't it? And there are practical things we can do. One of the most important, and honestly maybe the hardest, is learning to genuinely say, I might be wrong, or you know what? I don't know. I need more information.
Oof, that's tough for the ego.
It really is. But it's not wreckness. It's intellectual humility. It's psychological strength. It means you've overcome that ego need to always be infallible.
It feels like for some, saying I don't know is like admitting defeat.
It does. Martin Luther King Jr. had that great line, something like, we'll remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Narcissists often fear that silence, the space where reflection happens, because they might hear something uncomfortable about themselves. True strength lets you sit in that uncertainty, to ponder, to admit you don't have all the answers. Another thing, focus on building influence and trust through understanding. Genuine connection, not intimidation or being the loudest or just pulling rank.
How does that work in practice?
Well, people with that quiet, true strength can often get people with totally different views to actually listen. Think about, say, Obama's practice of trying to articulate his opponent's view fairly before arguing against it.
Right, showing you actually listened and understood.
Exactly, even if you still disagree. Or someone like Morris Chang at TSMC built a tech giant known for being calm, understated, but having immense expertise. That silent authority, it comes from substance, not noise.
So it's about connection and understanding, not conquest.
Precisely. It's collaborative, built on respect. And one more practical thing. Practice delayed reaction.
Delayed reaction.
Yeah, emotional self-mastery. Not every challenge, every comment, every frustration needs an instant, fiery response. Taking a breath, thinking, maybe even choosing not to respond if it's not productive. That's exercising control not over the other person, but over yourself, your impulses, choosing your response, not just reacting. So if we pull it all together, true power, it's internal stability, restraint, humility, resilience built through hardship, character. It's quiet, it endures. Fake power, that's all external. Needing control, validation, arrogance, performance, image. Loud, but ultimately brittle.
That really clarifies the difference. And it's amazing how this idea of inner mastery echoes through time, isn't it? Like Lao Tzu saying, he who conquers others is strong, he who conquers himself is mighty.
Exactly. Self-conquest as the ultimate strength.
And it even links up with modern psychology, like Carol Dweck's growth mindset idea.
Perfectly. Dweck's work fits right in. True strength comes from embracing challenges, learning from failures, always growing, not from thinking you're already perfect. That takes resilience. Humility, choosing learning over just looking good. It's about getting better, not just being the best right now. And this isn't just philosophy, there's data. Studies show leaders who show empathy, restraint, humility, they're seen as more influential. Their teams trust them more, are more engaged.
Interesting.
Even things like mindfulness meditation science shows it boosts emotional control under pressure, directly building that inner strength. So practical steps for cultivating it. Practice mindfulness. Find positive role models, historical figures, people you know who have that quiet strength, and consciously shift your focus from performing for others to genuinely working on your own inner growth, character development.
This has been really, really insightful. It totally reframes power, not as something you wield over others, but something you cultivate within. A quiet strength built from the inside.
Exactly. And maybe that leaves you, our listener, with a final thought to chew on. If true power really is about choosing restraint over domination, inner strength over outer performance, humility over arrogance, where in your own life right now could you benefit from shifting how you think about and maybe practice what strength really looks like?
That is a powerful question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And hey, as we discussed, you should definitely check out our old friend Micky's YouTube channel. It's got fun memes, music, wine tasting, travel vlogs. It's really fun, seriously. Go take a look.
Yeah, good stuff over there.
All right, thanks again for listening. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.